Happy Monday, everybody. I hope your week is off to a good start. I am Kevin Marheine, your host here on the Lions Grid, and today, of course, we're talking Lions coming off that 42-30 loss at home to the Minnesota Vikings. It was, it's kind of rough. So obviously the game was 1 o'clock yesterday, so there's been quite a bit of time to sort of digest, mull things over, taking some other people's viewpoints, and really, I think it boils down to something pretty simply. Uh, the last couple of games, they had that close loss against Kansas City at home. They were there in it against the Packers and lost that game. Uh, and really, it felt like the Lions could sort of play with anybody. Yeah, they lost, but they stuck in those games. And of course, with the Packers game, you also had the calls by the refs, which helped influence the outcome of that game. Um, Not saying that the loss is completely on that, but certainly they did have an impact. Not the sole cause, but they were part of the whole equation that equated into that loss. So, um, you know. Uh, Two very good teams, two teams that I think will be in the playoffs. Close losses to them, not the end of the world. Then you have this game against the Vikings, and this is the first of those three losses that feels like the Lions just got smashed. Like it didn't feel good. What the Vikings did to them was it was rough. It was you know a beatdown. Over 503 total yards by the Vikings in this game. They threw for 337. They ran for another 166. They were running the ball. They were throwing the ball. They were having their way with that Lions defense, and it didn't feel good. It didn't look good. And it's kind of worrisome because before the game I was talking about there being the concern that hey, you've momentum exists both inside of the game and as part of the larger picture, right? It's not just an in-game thing. It can impact the season as a whole. You've had these two really close losses against two very good teams. The Vikings are also a good team. But this week you just get smashed by them. Like they come in and into your house and they just do whatever they want, throwing and running the football. Um, it's going to be hard to say what sort of impact that has on the Lions moving forward because it didn't seem like there was anything the Lions could do to stop them. And that's mostly from the defensive perspective, right? Because the offense had a pretty good day. Matt Stafford, 4 touchdowns. He threw for over 300 yards himself. There weren't any turnovers. Stafford did throw one turnover. My bad. He did have the one interception. But overall, a pretty solid day. Outside of that one pick, and I know they did kick one field goal, they did much better converting touchdowns in this game. Like, I really don't have any complaints about what I saw out of the offense. I think they stepped up. They played a pretty good game, and the Vikings defense is one of the better defenses. So, I think there is something to be said about the performance the offense put in because I do think they did a decent job there. Of course, losing Kerryon Johnson during the game, really weren't able to get too much going on the ground. I believe we finished the game with, let me just take a look here. I think it was, I know it's below 100 yards rushing, but it's loading. 81 total rushing yards. So, not great. Obviously, losing Kerryon Johnson is a big part of that. Hopefully, he'll be able to get back on the field soon. And, of course, another big injury, of course, to Darius Slay there, forcing Justin Coleman to play on the outside. Justin Coleman, I think, is one of the best, if not the best, slot cover corners in the league. And when he's there and allowed to play that position, he's been doing great things for the Lions, and I have no complaints. And I really don't blame him for the fact that he isn't really suited to be an outside corner. And because of the injury to Slay, that's where they've been, they were forced to move him out there, and the Vikings took advantage of it. I don't really put that on his feet. It's sort of known that Justin Coleman thrives in the slot, and in moving him to the outside is a little bit of a stretch. Obviously, it wasn't the plan. Slay gets hurt. They had to adapt. But it's just one of those things that makes you wonder if there wasn't a better if there wasn't some other solution they could have came up with, because I think leaving Coleman in the slot may have worked better, because I think he is unfortunately a bit of a liability when you put him out wide. I understand he's arguably the second best corner on the team, and at times has been playing as the best corner on the team, but that's largely because he gets the chance to play in the slot, where he does well. If you sort of take that away from him, you're removing what he does best, and it makes it definitely harder on him. But I think the big story, the Vikings only sacked Stafford twice, but the Lions, if you've caught any of Mike Valenti's rant today when he was doing his two fraud segments on 97.1 The Ticket, as he'll have, as you probably heard several times, the Lions only had one QB pressure that entire game. 34 dropbacks to throw the ball, one QB pressure the entire game for the Lions. Certainly an area of their defense where they struggle. Like, I think their secondary is certainly pretty good. Definitely better with Slay in there and letting Coleman play the slot. But I think overall the secondary plays rather well. But that defensive line, which we thought was going to be a strength of this team, possibly a position group where the Lions would be elite. That was not only the thought here locally, but the thought by people, sort of outside in the national news media. Everyone liked the acquisitions that were made by the Lions. We haven't really had a chance to throw everybody out there together. There's been the injuries to Hand. Mike Daniels has been hurt as well. So you haven't got to see the full iteration of that defensive line. But certainly to this point, Trey Flowers coming in with that big contract hasn't really contributed a whole lot of spark, a whole lot of flash, hasn't been really impactful for the team. And so, part of that is the defensive line underperforming. The other part is this, I think the defensive scheme that Matt Patricia and co are going with, where they don't blitz anybody, they drop everybody back into coverage. Us not getting any pressure on the quarterbacks just lets them sort of sit back there, and then sooner or later somebody's going to get open. It's just bound to happen. So if we're not getting any pressure on the QBs, letting them drop back there, it's no wonder Kirk Cousins tore us apart. I mean, it's going to happen. If you're not getting any pressure on the QB, you're in for a bad time. And 503 total yards of offense. Not only can they sit back there and throw the ball, but then when we go to run the ball, or when they go to run the ball, teams are just shoving it down our throats. It's tough to say how you fix this if you're the Lions. It's been really bad. Jeff points out there, 500 plus yards. They just got smashed. Now the Lions had 433 yards themselves. So like I said, that offensively, the Lions, I think, did pretty much everything they needed to win the game. Just defensively, it was ugly. And, hopefully they can right the ship here next weekend when they take on the Giants. But Saquon Barkley is going to be there. Definitely a guy who could look to run wild on us. If we're not going to be putting pressure on Daniel Jones, he might be able to find some openings. And I really don't know what to expect out of the Lions at this point. Originally coming into the season, I had them going 8-8. I think was the projected record I went with. I know Joe had them at like 6-10. And after the first couple of weeks there, it was like, okay, hey, they're going to overachieve. They might come out here and surprise me. And I sort of started to buy in, drinking some of that famous Lions Kool-Aid, thinking, hey, they're going to come out here and be really good. And then, of course, they had the close games against Kansas City and the Packers. And even though they lost, I was still feeling pretty good about them. But then this week against the Vikings, it leaves me sort of dumbfounded. I really don't know what to expect anymore, because I don't want to fully slip and be like, okay, the season's done and over with. There's still plenty of games left, of course, one less now, but there's still, a good amount of football left to be played in the season. But you're starting out 0-2 in the division. You're on a 3-game losing skid. It doesn't feel good. And, I don't know if even just, obviously, a loss to the Giants would make it feel even worse, 4-in-a-row losses, and I think they're definitely a better team than the Giants. So spoiler alert for the pick'em segment, I will be going with the Lions over the Giants. But if you lose that game, or even if you win that game, like a win against the Giants, a team you should beat, isn't going to suddenly make me be like, oh, okay, they're fine, they're definitely getting in to the playoffs. It's going to be like I'm going to need to see a sustained period of good performance on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball to really regain faith in the Lions, because it just, you know, I wasn't feeling too down on them, but just that 42-30 beat down at the hands of the Vikings, it took the wind out of my sails a little bit there. I thought the Lions didn't have them in my top five. I know Joe had them as his second-rated team in the NFL, which certainly seemed a little aggressive. But I wouldn't. I definitely thought they were in the top half of the league after that game against the Vikings. I don't know. They have not been good on defense. The injury to Slay, depending on how long it takes him to get back, if Coleman's forced to play the outside and taken out of that comfort spot where he really thrives, that can have negative ramifications for the team, and it's bad. It's bad, and I don't know when it's going to get better. And I wish I had like good news, like, oh, don't worry, Lions fans, it's going to turn around at this point. I don't know what that turnaround point looks like. If you're a Lions fan, you're probably much more used to this than I am. It seems to be the common occurrence with them. So they get you to start sipping that Kool-Aid, and then they hit you with some of their patented finding ways to lose games. But this one wasn't even a game where they found a way to lose it. It was just a game where they just got outplayed and manhandled. Which it's the only game this season where it's happened, so this might be the fluke, and hopefully it turns out to be that way. But it's kind of hard to look on the bright side of things and feel positive after you're coming out of that game. I'm not going to say this is going to become the new expectation for the Lions week in and week out, that teams are just going to come in and just obliterate them. But at the same time, it's hard to be looking through rose-colored glasses and be like, oh, yeah, it's going to be fine. They're going to rebound. Everything's good, when you just get demolished. So, obviously, we'll be taking a look at what it means for bigger picture NFC North-wise during our Kings in the North episode tomorrow. So if you're interested in seeing where the Lions stack up against the other NFC North teams, we'll be taking a look at that tomorrow. But as mentioned, they are now 0-2 in division play, and as we've been sort of harping on all season long, taking care of business against your division opponents is a very important thing, and certainly not the start we were hoping to see from the Lions in that regard, but not necessarily something that goes against my expectations, but we'll see. That will do it for today's episode. If you did enjoy the channel, please do help the channel grow. Hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel are the two best ways to support us at the moment. And in addition to supporting us, if you are interested, in the description of this video is a link to my Extra Life fundraising page. Extra Life is a organization that works with gamers to help raise money for the Children's Miracle Network. Myself, I'll be supporting Beaumont's Children's Hospital here in Southeast Michigan. So if you are interested in that, you can check out that. Again, the description to that page will be in the description of this video. And if you want to help support the Children's Miracle Network, please do consider donating there. Of course, I really appreciate your support, as well as the people that the money will actually be going to, and 100% of the donation goes straight to them. So if you are interested, check that out. Until the next video, which will be tomorrow night's Kings in the North episode, I'm Kevin Marheine. We'll catch you during the next video. Have a good night.